Welcome to the Creative Agency Success Show, the go-to resource for agency owners looking to scale their business. Join us every week to stay ahead of the curve and position your agency for future success.
Jody. That was a fun podcast with Jack Skeels from Agency Agile. I know he's an old friend of yours, and I've met him the last couple of years, and he just brings great content and really relevant content for us. So I thought that was a really fun episode to talk with Jack.
Yeah, rolling out his new book, Unmanaged, is a must read for sure by agency owners, and really not just agency owners, really any kind of service-based business, because it really kind of unwinds the manager. Because as we get bigger in organizations, and Jack talks about it in really easy language, it becomes complex, and we start having too many managers managing, and so forth. And so, what he's trying to do, or what his research has shown, a smaller structure is a more productive structure, and it doesn't have to be flat. That's not what we're talking about, but getting some of those managers out and having them be more productive is kind of the key there. And so we talk about it in great lengths during this next episode here. I think we pushed the 30-minute boundary by probably
Definitely.
10 minutes, I think.
Yeah, I think we went 45 minutes, but again, it was one of those things where you were like having therapy live. We actually analyzed our business a little bit and had some real moments where we were going deep on it. So I didn't want to stop the recording early because I think it was really valuable, and I think everybody will really get a lot out of going into the full 45 minutes.
Yeah, and I think it's also important as we kind of use ourselves as a test case in there with our own company, with Summit. I think it's important to understand that, hey, a service-based company like an accounting firm is very similar to an agency in a lot of respects, and we go through the same issues: pipeline. We go through utilization, average bill rate. If we're subscription based, or a little different in that regard to a lot of agencies, but we're doing it in a very similar manner with PMs, AMs, the whole works. And so I think what we're talking about during this will shed a lot of light on what maybe some of the common issues that you're having in your productivity, with productive issues you might be having.
Great. Yeah. So everybody enjoy listening to Jack and enjoy the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's episode. This is going to be another great episode because we're bringing one of our longtime friends on here with Jack Skeels, who both Jody and I have traveled with and been to several conferences with. So these are always the ones where we're pretty comfortable and have a lot of great conversations. So really excited to have you on, Jack. Jack is with Agency Agile, and he works with a ton of agencies out there. If you're an agency, I'm guessing you've heard of Jack. But even with that said, Jack, why don't you give a little bit of your background and introduce yourself?
Oh, thanks so much, Jamie. And thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it. I've been on a multi-decade journey of entrepreneurship and management consulting, and was a think tank researcher for over 3 years, and eventually stumbled into the agency world and loved it. Wonderful people, exciting environment, and people who think differently, all that fun stuff, like you guys as well. And I just, at some point I was trying to write a book. I tell more about this in the book, my new book, Unmanaged. But I was trying to write a book that would help agency owners understand what's going on. And it's not a leadership book. It's really a managing book. And I think today, you guys probably noticed this, there's an overemphasis on if you only led better. And if you become the great leader, your agency will become amazing. And I just dispute that. I think that at the end of the day, agencies are managed. Leadership matters, don't get me wrong, but agencies are managed to success. And I think that we're trying to fill a gap here, and we do that with Agency Agile. We teach how to manage your agency better, especially from a delivery perspective. But the book is really aimed at what do you need to know as a leader to actually make great managing happen inside of your organization.
Yeah, it's definitely a great read for anyone that's not only in the agency world, but anyone that's really in the leadership role to think about, okay, how's the best way to utilize managers and make sure managers are really doing what they need to do within the organization. And as always, we have Jody Grundon here as well. So welcome to the show, Jody.
Yeah, Jack, it's been a pleasure knowing you for such a long time.
Likewise, man.
First, we met in Puerto Rico.
Vieques Island,
out there on an island, yeah. So that's pretty cool. And then known each other ever since. And the last time that saw you was just a couple months ago. It was at a soda event in Mexico City, and with that, sat into one of your workshops there, and I learned a ton. So much so I brought it back to Jamie and say, Jamie, we gotta make some changes here pretty quickly. And so hopefully we can talk about that. And I would love for you to, as we're going through there, to kind of use us as a test case, as we're going through to maybe, and that might help the agencies kind of identify different issues that may be out there, and kind of trying to get the gist of everything. Because again, we overmanage, and that's the biggest that's one of the biggest things that you point out in your book, is that too much managers. We've got to teach our team how to manage themselves, how to really shave out that extra layer of bureaucracy, or whatever you want to call it there. So super excited about it, and can't wait to dive into this book. Nicely done, Jack.
Cool. Thanks, man. High praise from you.
Great. So let's jump right in. So if you want to just kind of start with, the elevator pitch of what the book is trying to tell our listeners and us. And so I think Jody's idea of kind of walking through our organization would be a great way to evaluate it. So yeah, why don't you start with that elevator pitch of what exactly the synopsis of the book would be?
That's I should probably be more practiced at that by now, but partly is the post-holiday food coma, I imagine, as well. Look, I think probably the biggest thing you can take away is we almost named the book The Manager Tax. That was the working title for 9 months and the like. And we did some survey work, and it turned out we needed something a little bit more provocative, which Unmanaged is a little bit more provocative and a little bit less negative. But the reality is there's a negative reality inside of all of this, and that is the manager tax. And you want me to peel some of that onion first before you guys get into?
Let's peel it away.
Cool.
Yeah, let's talk about this.
And I think that you were smart by not including the word tax in your title, because most people will just run away from books that have the word tax in it. So that's probably the reason that you wanted it.
I think I want to say something up front. I have to say, because of what's going to follow, which is I love managers. I've spent a lot of my life as a manager. I think virtually every manager goes into work trying to do a great job, trying to make the organization better, et cetera. And the question is, it's just sort of like a coaching thing. If you don't see yourself as well as you could, you're limited in how good you can be at what you're trying to do. It's like getting a coach for pickleball or something like that, right? They can tell you, hey, put your foot over there, you'll hit better shots. This is that same sort of thing. I come from a big racket sports background, my whole family and all that kind of thing. Here's
note to self: never play Jack and pickleball.
Well, just started, so you got a window of opportunity here. Then it'll be closed here. So here's the idea: managers are far more costly than we realize typically. Yeah, and that is typically comes in I outlined 5 different ways that managers are costly. I'll hit through a couple of those real quick. One is, this is a Nobel Prize winning idea anyway. So a guy won a Nobel Prize for the idea that the bigger you get, the greater the percentage of managers you have in your organization, and that ultimately is the greatest limit on productivity for your organization. And said quite simply is, the more managing you have going on, the lower the overall productivity of the organization. And you can think of this from a financial perspective, like managers are the most expensive people we have in our organization, right? And as that group grows, the overhead cost grows. And you can think of it in other ways, that the act of a manager interacting with someone, which we'll call a maker, if you will, right? That is non-productive time. It may be productive for the manager, but it's not productive for the maker. And the speed of the agency, or the speed of the organization, is really the speed of the makers. And I'll do a couple other little distinctions here. Now, I want you guys to outline your thing. What happens a lot of times inside of agencies and other complex project-driven organizations is we assign people partial managerial roles. Okay. Like I'm a department manager for creative or something like that, but I'm still doing creative. Now there's this very strange situation here where I just took my best person, okay, presumably most productive, highest impact on the quality and productivity of our work and all that kind of thing. And I took some of their time and made them managerial. Now the thing is, being a manager is inherently a chaotic world to live in. So I not only reduced the productivity of that top deep specialist, that amazing person, by the amount of time they spend being managerial, but I also now have exposed them to all the other managers who can interrupt them and distract them and call them into meetings and all that kind of thing. And what you'll see is there's like almost a 2x decrease in productivity. I make someone a half-time manager say goodbye to their productivity. And typically this is what we do. This is called the meritocracy, where I promote someone because of merit. They're really good at it. And I put them into a managerial job, right? And even if it's just a little bit, one toe in the water or one foot in the other boat, immediately drops your productivity. This is all research. There's great research behind all this stuff. Of course, we see it live in action with the over 200 agencies we've worked with and the like. And the number of managers, last little thing, inside of a typical agency, you get up to a 50-person agency, it's 15 to 20 managers. People that have a manager title, project manager, account manager, requirements or strategy manager, department manager. It's just crazy how much managing you have going on inside of these organizations. And it definitely drives productivity down. We've proven that over the last decade. As you unmanage your organization, productivity goes up, happiness goes up, et cetera. Okay. End of presentation. Now back to you guys.
Jamie, go ahead. You want to explain? I'll give the overview on our situation, and maybe this will help some of the people in the audience. Now, keep in mind that we're an accounting firm, so a little different, but really the same. A lot of things that we do are identical to what a creative agency is going to do, what a dev shop's going to do, all that kind of stuff. And so, hopefully, this will kind of help out a little bit. So when we before we merged with Anders, we were pretty much a flat organization. We have, Jamie, he's the accounting manager ahead of all of the CFOs in the accounting department, and the basically our service delivery, and with that, that's kind of going horizontal, right? And so that's touching each of the different layers. And then we had, in addition to that, we had a CFO. Under that CFO, we had what we called a senior level accountant, which was typically 2 to 12 years of experience. They're the ones actually doing a lot of the work, the day-to-day work, whether it's accounting or whether it's finance, whatever that doing. They're preparing it for the CFO, who then delivers it to the client. And then underneath them, we had just simply the doers, which were the accounting team. And a lot of times, those folks were either near shore, offshore, or we did have some onshore folks doing that work. And so it's just pretty much a 3-layer system, pretty flat in nature. And
that's
then
actually more hierarchy than I thought you guys would have had. I mean, I actually just assumed it was just, the direct delivery people. That's interesting. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
And so then we merged into a traditional accounting firm format where they have an accounting they have an accountant, they have a senior level accountant, they have a manager, they have a senior level manager, they then have a director, and then they have a partner. So you've got many different layers within that. And the idea is that it's a pyramid type thing. The idea is, as you grow up, fewer and fewer people are going to be able to get to the next level and so forth until you have the partner at the top. And so it completely 2 different structures. And so as we merged into it, our task is to kind of meld the 2 structures together to form something that really does well and is highly productive. So that's the idea. And so what happens is we before we make the merger, we're at a 50% gross profit margin overall. Super excited about it. And as we're about a year and a half into the merger, we're down to about a 39% gross profit margin. So you can see we lost about 11% right there. And and so now we're like, okay, well, that's not acceptable. Can't do that. And so we've got to figure out how to get back to that 50% or near. It doesn't have to necessarily be 50%, but a solid profit margin between 45 and 50%. And so that's kind of the gist of it. And Jamie and Adam and a few others are tasked at making that happen. So that's the background.
And just to add to that a little bit, I think just pre-Anders, one of the things that we always did at Summit was we would think about something. And so, for example, onboarding, right? So like you kind of talked about the partial manager, and that was something that Adam and I've had arguments about several times but the question would be okay, can we have someone that only focuses on onboarding? And anytime we would add something like that, obviously we'd have to make our producers more productive, right? So that was kind of the Summit model prior to Anders, is we had an onboarding team. We had a training team. We had 3 or 4 other teams where it was 1 or 2 people in those roles, and that's all they did, right? All I do is onboarding. All I do is train new employees. All I do is do this. And so we had 3 or 4 people, project managers. We had 3 or 4 people in our role already that were doing that. And of course, back in the day when we were a little smaller, it was easier to be like, okay, we're going to add this one person that's going to be a project manager. And so they're going to be $75,000, and so they're going to cost that. So we have to charge more, or we have to have our people work a couple more hours, or have a bigger book of business. And so we did that prior to merging with Anders. So then you take those two models where we already have these people on the side doing specialized things, blend them in with an organization that has that very true hierarchy, and then that's where the 39% gross profit came from. It's like we already kind of blended two models that don't necessarily work well together, and we're trying to figure out how to make it work. So that's just a little bit more background on that too, is that again, we had those manager roles, but we were really good at managing them, knowing exactly how to pay for them in ways of like, hey, we know we need someone to focus on onboarding, so onboarding is better. But in order to do that, we're going to have our team have a little bit bigger books, and so we were always able to do that. But once we merged together, it just got out of control because it was too much. It was too big to do both those models at one time.
Yeah, very very interesting story and challenge. Yeah, there are a whole bunch of ideas in the book, obviously, that touch on this. Let me hit. I think probably a good place to start, because it's one of the big shifts between the two models. I'm going to back up in time to the 1960s, 50s, 60s, 70s, as I love to do. And there's a point where someone decided maybe we don't need to just have department managers, but we should have what ended up being called matrix managers. In other words, it started actually originally with designers, engineers, designers versus production engineers. Like, if you're going to design something, let's make sure it's buildable, kind of thing, right? And eventually the idea, and Ken Olson of Digital Equipment Corporation, DEC, the CEO, piloted this thing called matrix managing. He loved it, and then he killed it 3 years later. He said, because it's killing innovation and productivity. We have too many managers now. But the rest of the world didn't get the memo. Okay? And people think, it's really, really interesting, is that if one manager is costly to a worker, okay, and they are, okay, that's just fact, okay, multiple managers are more than multiple costly. Okay. In other words, the manager times manager math is pretty ugly. In other words, if I have, look, typical, I'll do the agency thing because that's part of our little spiel, right?
Yep.
50-person agency, 15 managers. I've got a senior art director who has 3 account managers, 2 project managers, and at least 1 department manager, 6 managers who can come visit this person at a given moment and interrupt them and tell them what they should be doing and not doing, right? Okay, and this is all in the idea because it's a multi-project environment. These different account managers have different projects. They're multi-allocated, all that kind of thing. The point being that when I introduce a multi-managerial environment, I get multiplicative impact. Okay, it's not a linear impact. The second manager, and by the way, as I add managers, they make other managers less effective, right? Because if I was the only manager, all I could do is just manage, okay? But now that I've got other managers around me, I got to go interact with them, so I get less effective. I get more expensive every time you add another manager to the mix. Okay, this is another one of those. This is, I think, number 4 in the manager taxes, is that more managers equals less effective managers. Now, there's a thing that happens, and I'm not sure, I'm going to ask you, but I'm explaining it first. This is a question whether it's happening to you. You talked about partitioning, which is a great thing to do. Okay. When you don't partition, when you start saying, well, we're all managers, and we call it, in the literature, they call this, the vertical manager is the department manager. In other words, I'm creative department, I'm the creative director, ECD or something like that. I'm the department manager. I'm responsible for all those classic vertical functions like skills development and hiring and firing and all that kind of, or just, those decisions at least. The other managers we add are referred to as quasi-managers, because they're not really a department. They're not a vertical manager, yet they can still assert managerial control and have impact on the cost and effectiveness of managing overall. Okay, so that's, you see, all of a sudden, that's one of the things, is that's why I start getting multiple managers, even though they're not managers. Now, a couple of weird things happen in here. One of which is, if I was a single vertical manager with my 8 people, their productivity is directly attributable to my custodianship, my supervision, my wisdom in my actions. Am I letting them get their work done? Or am I always going and bugging them and interrupting them? You can attribute it to me. You can go, hey, you guys only made 200 widgets last week. What's going on? I'm like, well, I had 7 meetings with the team. Maybe that affected it, right? And so we've got that direct attribution. When I get a multi-manager environment, okay, there's no direct attribution to any manager. So all managers actually have costless actions because you can't attribute the cost of calling a meeting or creating a crisis around priorities and all that kind of thing, right? So essentially, we get to an unmanaged managerial environment because all these managers actually in an agency especially think they have a right to weigh in on any topic. Okay. And this is in the literature from over the last 50 years, is that agency style organizations, ad hoc project organizations, typically managers don't stay in their lane. Okay. Is they don't say, it's my job to only talk about project administrative topics. Okay. It'll be like, I don't think the client's going to like that. It's too red or whatever, that kind of thing. Okay. They slide out of their lane. And also because it's a just get the work done, time driven, project delivery driven environment, they go to this, I can do whatever I want because my job is to just get things done. Okay. And for me to get my things done, not the overall productivity of the organization, I will optimize my actions for my outcomes, not the organization's outcomes. And so then if I take multiple managers that are all trying to optimize their outcomes individually, I start getting a suboptimal organizational output. Follow what I'm getting at there? Okay. So this is that's where you had sort of swim lanes, like with the onboarding team, is great because they know that the only thing they can be a manager about is the onboarding function, right? The minute you start saying, well, then fine, we're going to have line managers, vertical managers be part of onboarding. Now we get all this muddiness, right? And even if you just have like your onboarding team and the vertical managers doing it, all of a sudden you got a lot less efficient. Plus, your vertical managers are your power players. Like you want them to be doing as little managing as possible, right? Because the research shows it directly drives productivity loss. The more you make the lead, what they call the deep specialist manage, the less productive the department is. So I'll stop there. A couple ideas from the book, A.
Yeah, no, I think it's very similar to what happened. Like you said, like we had people probably in management roles, but they were very specialized, right? Like we said, we had an onboarding manager. Their main role was onboarding. We had project managers who weren't even managers. I mean, they weren't managers in title, but their actual role was to make sure that any projects we had going on were being thought through and planned out. So they were more just like planning people. And then, that's there's a couple of roles we had in that manager role, and they were very specific to your point. And now I think that we've grown. And I think the part where we've really got to think through, Jody, and you can jump on this one, is when we're getting bigger and we have CFOs that are what we're calling pod leaders. So we have the pods, and the CFOs have their book of business, but they also have to manage the pod. It's like, okay, how do we get down that path of making sure that they have the best interest of their pod profitability in line and not their just their own book or whatnot there too. So
yeah, I think that, go ahead. I'm sorry, Jody, go ahead. Yeah.
So kind of tackling to that point, we've done a lot of different things over the years. I mean, we've tried everything to make sure, to come up with different ideas, what works, what doesn't work. And the pod thing, I thought was really a solid solution. We just had too few people in the pod. It became fragile. One person would leave, and then the pod would kind of crumble while we're replacing with another person. And so I think the size of the pod is a big part. Now that we've grown to, I think about 75-ish people, I think we can break it back into the three, maybe a 3-pod structure there, and then just add a pod once we get to 100 people or something like that. Add another pod. So you got the different pods coming down, Jack. Just kind of for clarity, each pod would have 3 or 4 CFOs, some accounting people, and so forth. The only thing they wouldn't have is like the management team. They wouldn't have the supporting staff, so they wouldn't have I'd say not the management team, but the marketing team. They wouldn't have biz dev in the pod. They wouldn't have maybe the technology guys
HR,
in the pod.
they don't have their own HR department.
HR people. So those folks would be outside of the pod, but it would be primarily a production pod. All 4 of them would be, and we thought even making them specific to different industries. So we're heavily obviously in the creative agency industry, so that might be two of the 4 pods. We're at 3 now. Maybe as we develop new niches, whether it's cannabis or trucking or legal or whatever that might be, maybe that's a 3rd one, or maybe that's like the a la carte one. That's kind of everything that doesn't belong in. a pod type of thing. Because like I said, 90% of what we do is service based anyway, so it's very similar from one to the next. So that kind of gives you a little bit more background on what I'm thinking through. And then horizontally, you would have an accounting manager, you would have the advisory manager like Jamie is, and they'd have just those two managers overseeing the entire, all the different CFOs, all the different accountants, because you divide accountants and advisors are two different folks. And they'd be, so you go horizontal and vertical. That's kind of, I think, your matrix thing what you're talking about out there. So that kind of gives you the background on that. So Jamie, did I leave anything out on that?
No, I think that's exactly kind of the model we have is like Jody said, we have the vertical, we're the pod leader there, and then we kind of have the sideways where it's like, okay, you're working on a consulting issue, you come to me. You're working on an accounting issue, you come to an accounting director. That's kind of the path that we're thinking about.
Yeah, so pods. It's a great topic to bring up because if you believe what the research says, which is that there's that the size of managing grows faster than the size of the organization, eventually you're going to hit a spot where it gets quite chaotic, and agencies will get to like a 1-to-2 ratio of manager titles versus maker titles. Right? That's crazy. It's one manager for every two makers. You gotta be kidding. And part of it is that the proliferation of clients. Like 50-person agencies, might have 30, 40 clients, right? So that requires a lot of account people, which then blah, blah, blah. Now, pod design, which is not covered particularly in the book, but something Agency Agile does all the time, right? And that's the real answer to some of that geometrically growing chaos is to actually just say, well, the organization only gets so big, and then we clone it and make another one, and those are essentially pods. There are questions about how you organize the pod, right? And some of them are intuitive, some of them aren't. There's also things like pods have to exist with outside resources. You mentioned one already, like marketing resources. Pods generally exist with some shared resources, in other words, resources that serve into the pod, right? And how do you manage those? There's overflow and underflow. In other words, when this pod gets slow, what happens, right? Or when this pod gets too busy. And essentially what we see over time and working with a lot of different agencies is the pod boundary rules. All those things I just talked about are probably 60% of the success factor. Right. In other words, we worked with one Wisconsin shop, large 250-person agency. They had like 6 or 7 pods, and they were pods in name only. Okay, they were literally like, yeah, you're in this pod, but anyone can grab you anytime from any other pod. And I said to the CEO, and he just nodded. He's like, yeah, I know it's bad. I said, saying you have pods and then not having them is worse than not having pods at all. Okay, because now you made a promise to everyone, and it's routinely betrayed on an hour by hour basis and the like. So it's the pod operating system and the pod interface model that you need to master. And and you guys are also, there's size considerations. What's too big, too small? Right. That depends on your work mix. In general, small pods are really fragile, just for the reason you were talking about, right? If you did 10-person pods, either lose a person or lose a client, and now what do we do, and all that kind of thing.
It's horrible. Yeah. So with managing inside those pods, so kind of talking about that then. So let's say we do have 3 pods, 75 people. Probably, how many of those think of production people, Jamie? Probably 40?
Of our 75? Probably a little higher. That probably 50.
Yeah, 50,
I'd say we're 2/3 production.
Yeah, 2/3 production. And then the rest of it would be what? Directors and
like
marketing,
HR,
business development,
that type of stuff.
HR, that sort of thing. Yeah. So we're probably even closer to 60, I'll bet.
Yeah.
60 to 65 of those. So we got about 20-ish folks in a pod. And so out of that, if you're just taking one pod, let's say it's 20 people, Jack, and let's say that's all we're going to focus on. How many layers of management would you need in that pod? And what's considered a layer of management? Do we talking about the doer and then a manager over top of the doer and then a manager over the manager? I mean, at what point?
I'm going to ask this a different way as well, and I'm going to I'm going to call one of my weaknesses out, and this is an argument Adam and I had the other day. Is so I'm a director, right? Like I consider myself a director, and the reason I'm a director is because I feel like I have to direct the managers, and the managers go and work. And so I guess the question is that a flawed model? Should I really just be a manager and not have the in between path between me and the production people?
So this is one of my favorite topics in the book and in life as well,
Yep.
is we overestimate how important managers are. Okay.
Hmm.
And as if somehow nobody can manage but a manager. And this is the reason why Agency Agile, my consultancy, is named that way. And it's probably a bad marketing in one way because we don't really teach Agile, right? But what Agile showed people years ago, 2001, et cetera, is that you can let the team just run it. Okay. Is that literally you need much less managerial interaction. I start the book out with the story where we took a 15-person team that's being managed by 11 managers, and we removed 9 of the managers, 9.5 really, 9.5 of the managers, and the team went like 2 or 3 times faster and got the project done, which was going to be a disaster, right? So it's this amazing shift in productivity when we shift the managerial cohort. Now, there's a thing I talk about in the book, which is the idea of managerial control. I'm over you, like you were saying, Jamie, okay? I'm directing. First of all, the titles are screwed up, okay?
Hmm.
They're all military. All that stuff came from command and control military. Okay. It
Right.
should really be, and I have a model in section 5 called the layer cake model. And basically the idea is you getting a increase in your career growth status, or whatever words we want to use. I don't want to use promotion, okay? But because that's, again, that's a military term, right? Okay. But I've attained a new level of competency as a practitioner, right? And maybe that includes, client management skills and all that kind of thing. Congratulations. Now my job is to grow more people like me. Okay. My job is a growth job, not a control job. Okay.
Hmm.
And so what happens is that I only grow people when they have the chance to make decisions and self-manage and the like. Because I got to where I got because I'm a great self-manager, right? And the idea that because that everything that got me here is something that I should then apply to everyone, right, is exactly wrong. It should be
Right.
the other way around. What do you guys need to manage this situation, make good decisions? Let me support you, but it's yours to run. Okay. And that's the flat organization. And I see Jody's face. You remember this from back when you were smaller. You didn't know how to overmanage people when you were smaller. And agencies see this as well. The 15-person agency, just everyone gets it, and you get this amazing level of trust. The minute we start telling each other that managers are needed and that managing is needed, we start driving down productivity and actually driving down capability growth as well. And so I call it the layer cake because you don't move up the layer cake, you move down the layer cake. Okay, you've got more layer cake to support. If you go from mid to senior, now you've got the mids and the juniors that you're propping up, you're teaching, you're mentoring, you're supporting. Okay, and if I go from whatever seniors to expert or something like that, then I've got the whole stack I got to be responsible for. But I'm responsible for helping them get to join me in this level. Okay, and so that's a very different mentality and creates very different behaviors as well.
Does it take away the behavior? Because we get this thrown back a lot that people come to XYZ organization because they see the growth opportunity there. So the layer of growth, and if they're not seeing a different title every 2 to 3 years, they're going to go.
Well, you can
Does it?
give titles out. You just got to be careful about not giving hierarchical titles, right? Okay. In other words, and some great, some engineering organizations do this really well, like a Google or something like that, where I can become higher and higher in my craft, achieving whatever guru status or, like guru of gurus kind of thing, right? But this doesn't mean that I'm a director or a president or something like that, right? Now, one of our clients dealt with this problem. They implemented a very flat model, 40-person agency. And they dealt with it as follows. They said, when you leave here, and on LinkedIn if you want, you can call yourself whatever you want. That's fine. I don't care. Okay, why should I care? Okay. If you want to go exaggerate your skills by giving yourself a higher title than you deserve, then you're going to go on that journey, whatever that journey looks like, right?
Right.
But you get to say, you get to decide, but I don't want to have the titles inside the building here. Okay. Your title inside this building is helping us all succeed better, right? And being a member of the team, and we're judged by, remember the layer cake model, I'm judged by how well the people above me in that model do. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And one of our other great clients from years ago, a guy named Ben, had a 105 person agency, catch this, 105, I think 105 or 120 with 8 managers. Okay. 8 managers. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I said, how do you do that? And he said 2 things. One is, I decided I didn't want to be like an agency. And every time I think of what an agency would do, I do the opposite. Okay. And that included saying, if someone says we need a manager, I say, no, figure it out otherwise without a manager. And they did. And the second thing is, and this is part of the layer cake model, he said, we review our managers annually. I said, how do you do that? He goes, well, I ask all the people that they support whether they get a thumbs up or thumbs down. I said, oh, interesting. So, and those managers, the only way to evaluate the managers is whether the people they're supporting, AKA the makers, say that they've been supported by this manager or not. And I said, well, what happens when someone gets a thumbs down? And Ben said, then they come talk to me. And he paused. It's just beautiful pause, right? Because you're asking the next question. What about when you get a second thumbs down? And he smiles, he laughs, he said, nobody gets a second thumbs down. But that's elegant.
So Jack,
go ahead.
Yeah, that's a great one. And with Ben's story, his people weren't managers. So did they have any kind of hierarchy at all? Did he give the guru and the mid? Did they give different levels of within his organization?
He did a couple things. It's probably more like your organization than many. They were like an SEO SEM optimization company with some other functions thrown in, right? And so what he decided is he avoided account managers, by the way. It's kind of interesting, is he said, no, all the makers are account managers. I want my makers talking directly to the clients. Okay. And I want them supervised by someone who's more senior to make sure they're having the right conversations and doing it well. But I'm also going to give them line of sight financial incentive to make those accounts perform. So he tapped the maker's natural, innovative, entrepreneurial, self-serving thing. I want to do a great job for this client. If they get a lot of revenue and margin, then I'm going to get a piece of that to really drive down all the incentive stuff down to the lower levels of the organization, which made people care about what the organization cares about. Happy clients that are delivering good revenue and the like, right? And so that way the manager job was really, it sort of changes the manager job now, right? What do I need to do to help our makers create more revenue and create sustained clients better, right? And instead of just being my eyes, the one manager worrying about that, I've got 8 or 10 eyes, sets of eyes, all focusing on making sure those clients are happy, right? And so it's a very, very interesting shift in how we think about it.
Oh yeah, I think this is really good stuff. We could probably keep going for another hour. I think that I think what we might have to do is turn off the cameras and just like pay you by the hour to help Jody and I come up with our new structure.
Let's do it. Okay.
Happen after this call, anyways. So, but yeah, no, we actually are to the point where we get our fun question, and you've already kind of mentioned that this is the week between Christmas and New Year's that we're doing this interview, and so I'm gonna ask the boring question. And first off, you are allowed to say I don't believe in New Year's resolutions. So that's the first question is, do you believe in New Year's resolutions? And if the answer is no, then give me a goal for the next 6 months that you might have. And so that's the question is, first, do you believe in New Year's resolutions? And either way, what's a goal you have for improvement over the next 6 to 9 months, or maybe something new you want to learn? So Jody, I'm going to start with you this time. So we'll give Jack a little bit of chance to think. So first off, do you believe in New Year's resolutions?
No, I've never believed in New Year's resolutions.
Okay.
So I don't have any of those. Actually, it's kind of funny at the gym. I see all the people that do
in January,
3 weeks. and they disappear. And it's great. I try to avoid the gym the first month. Just
Do you have any goals
so,
or any things you want to learn over the next 6 months to a year then?
yeah, definitely. Health wise, I'm always looking to, improve my health, and working out's important. And so, I mentioned in an earlier episode that I'm going to be taking up jujitsu, and so
Cool.
that's something that will be happening in the first quarter, and only in the first quarter because the last 2 quarters I've been traveling 3 weeks out of the month. So I've not had an opportunity really to be in one place for any period of time. But jujitsu, it's something you really got to spend some time and energy and focus and that sort of thing. And so that's something I really want to do. And in order to do that, I've really got to get in better shape, because otherwise my jujitsu career will be really short, and I don't want that. Uh, on a business level, the biggest thing I think we've got to overcome in the business level is that we've got some unhappy folks, and we got some really happy folks, and so we've got to make sure that the unhappy folks turn into real happy folks, and I think that's going to happen, as we look for ways to unwind what we currently have in the manager, the two different structures, combine it to one level, and in the process, getting our profit margin back up to where it needs to be, because right now, I'd be okay with a profit margin of 40% if everybody is super happy and clients are super happy. But in this case, we've got employees that aren't, and so I got to make sure that we look at the employees, we get them to a happy level, and I think that's going to be unwinding a little bit and helping them out. So those are my two goals there. Healthy, getting things going, staying out of the gym for the first month as everyone else is doing their New Year's resolutions, coming back in when I can actually get things.
All right, Jack, how about you? First off, do you believe in New Year's resolutions?
I guess I think so. I mean, I'm a huge one on planning, and I don't know. I think so every year. I mean, every year towards the end of the year, I actually just started the process in December. I start looking at last year's whatever goals, affirmations, all that kind of thing, and grading myself about how I did. I don't treat them as absolutes and that kind of thing. But one of them was to get the book out this year, so I did actually get that done.
Awesome.
I do believe, I just want to throw in real quick. I've been so inspired by a book called Success Principles by Jack Canfield. I don't know if you know the book.
Okay. Is it because of the first name?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's the chicken soup of the soul guy. But
Okay.
he did the same thing
Yeah.
around business advice and career advice. And it's sort of like, it's like that other book, the chicken soup book, because you can look and read a page and a half and either throw it away or figure out how to use it, right? And it's just a great collection. So I highly recommend it to your listeners as well. Great for CEOs and that kind of thing. I started reading a couple of years ago. I still go back to it. I think personally, I'm building my writing career, obviously, and that's a personal thing as well as a work thing. And if I was to say, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be on the list, I already have book number 2 in my head, and I'm going to try and get that out this year. That'd be sort of a big thing to do. We're probably going to slightly reposition Agency Agile just from a name branding perspective because of that agile problem. And
I think that's a great idea. I think that's a great idea.
So those are the two big things, and of course, and the health thing. You're so spot on, Jody. It's got to become a lifestyle. And I'm lucky here in Southern California. I walk 3 blocks and I'm on a hiking trail. Walk 4 blocks and I'm at the beach. And I don't do that often enough, but I do it often. So I'm with you.
Yeah, and kudos to you on your book. I mean, I've written 2, and that first one is brutal. I mean, that first one is horrible. So I commend you on finishing it. There's many times I'd be like, oh my gosh, do I want to quit at any point here? Because some chapters would go just like that, as you know. Other chapters you'd spend a month.
Oh no.
So it's like weekend versus a month. It was like unreal. I'm sure you have that exact.
I think my numbers are larger that way. So we won't talk about the exact numbers, but it was a long journey.
It took a year and a half for me to do my first book, and my second book, you're right, because once you get your first book down, I think you start thinking that way. It's like you start kind of figuring it out. And the second book, it was maybe 2 months. Boom, I had it done. So I will tell you, the second book's gonna be a lot easier than the first book. So I definitely kudos to you for getting it done, and kudos for that being a
cool.
book.
Thank you.
Awesome. So those are great answers, and I'm gonna say it in a similar light. Something I've learned this year with my son specifically is sometimes New Year's resolutions get a little stale. So what we've always done for my son is we have like the realtors every year give you like all the calendars, so you end up with like 5 calendars. And so beginning of each year we're like, all right, what's your basketball goal for this year? And the first year we did it, his goal was to make 50,000 shots, and we actually I think early on it was like 24,000 shots, which we hit in like June. So we're like, okay, that goal didn't really, let's add on to it. And so like we've tracked that every year. And this year, as he's getting older, what we found is those goals get a little stale after a while. So what
Mhm.
we're doing this year is we're actually making them not quarterly goals, but 4 month goals. So what
How
what do you
old
want
is
to do
he?
over the next 4 months? Yeah. So what's the goal over the next 4 months? Because I think like especially when it comes to athletics, like you can accomplish a lot in 4 months. Okay. So what's your goal? And especially it works for him because in 4 months he'll be working with the high school or basketball team for the first time. Like, what do you need to do before you achieve that? And then at the end of that 4 months, by the time the next 4 months comes, then he'll be doing the high school tryouts. And so we've kind of broken it up into 4 months. So I was thinking about that for myself as well. And so my short-term goal, again, I used to do a lot of mutters and Spartans and stuff like that. I haven't done one for a couple of years because I've been playing so much basketball. But this year I'm like, okay, I need to do one of those again. And my daughter actually wants to do one with me. So
Oh,
we're
cool.
we are
Nice.
signing up for a Spartan race in May. And so that's my short-term goal, is to be able to keep up with her during a
Yeah.
Spartan race
Nothing like a
in May.
deadline.
So exactly. So that's
Yeah,
that's kind of the way I've looked at
exactly.
it this year. Is I'm gonna do shorter. I'm gonna do like shorter 3 4 month goals, and then like let them build onto each other. So that's
Nice,
kind of the way
nice.
I'm looking at it now. So cool. Well, I think this has been an awesome episode. Like I said, I know I'm sure gonna have a ton of homework coming out of this. Like Jody's gonna turn the camera off, and then just start asking me questions about how we're gonna do a lot of this stuff. But let's do final thoughts, and then while you're doing your final thought for us, Jack, as well, how do people find you? So we'll start with you, Jack. Final thoughts, and then again, how can people get hold of you and find you?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna end with what I started with as well, is that the message to the managers that might be listening to this as well. I wrote for leaders, but also for managers, and that is that you can be different as a manager. And the first step, like with anything, is gaining the awareness of what it takes to do things differently and the like. And that's the book's designed around that, just helping you see those things, and lots of vignettes in there and everything like that. Would love to hear from you. Would love for you to take a read of the book as well. You can reach me on LinkedIn at Jack Skeels, Skeels, and also at agencyagile.com. You can reach me and our whole team, and we can come help give clever advice like I was giving today here to Andrew's CPA. So
Great, Jody.
Yeah, Jack. I guess the definitely read the book. Here's a
thank you.
picture of
Yeah,
it, Unmanaged
I
by
had
Jack
it here.
Skeels. Love the book. Yeah, love the book. Yeah. Lot of good nuggets in this book. Whether you go that route or not, I mean, it's just a really good reading, and it'll give you some really good ideas that you can take away and apply to your agency. Because if you're like us, we usually take little bits of everything. Hey, I like this idea, I like this one. Let's incorporate it, see how it works. And I think Jack, you really did a great job in putting it together and
Oh,
making it very
thanks. Thank you.
readable for everyone. So yeah, nicely done. Actually, bought a few of the books and gave it to my entire director team. I don't know if Jamie's got his
I have
book
the
in
I have the
front of him or
PDF
not.
version.
He
Yeah, I do.
should.
Yeah, I'll give you a copy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, we were one of your first probably 5 or 6
Oh,
different
cool.
books
Thank
there.
you.
So I just want to say, nicely done. And for those that that they're looking for help, because one thing we didn't talk about is that the biggest thing that we see in agencies when it comes to us is really the difference between what they bill clients versus what they truly realize in that billing. If their standard billing rates, let's say it's $200 an hour, or whether you're flat fee or value based, whatever it comes out to being, and they're achieving 170 or 160, in some cases a lot worse. That's where you need to bring in somebody like a Jack in there, and he can definitely help you out. And that's what he specializes in, helping you get that margin closer together, to whether it's within 5 to 10% or 5% better, or whatever that might be, to really help grow. And I think he's done a great job over the years. And we speak with a lot of agencies, and I've not heard even one agency complain about how poor of a job you've ever done, that sort of thing.
Well, thank you.
It's like they're always talking about how great and helpful you are, and how you've really made a difference. So kudos to you for that. So definitely reach out if you need
I
help.
will second that. I've heard a lot of agencies I work with say, Jack has changed my life. Jack has changed the way we do things, and Agency Agile is a blessing. So yeah, I would definitely say that. But my final thought goes back to something you said early on as well, as you were talking about production and margins, and you weren't really mentioning margins, but I'm going to tie it back to the financial aspect.
Yep.
And I've been a CFO for several agencies. I work with all of our CFOs who all of them work on agencies, and one of the things we find is that it's really hard to find margins. It's really hard to find profit at the overhead number. Most agencies, most companies are somewhere between 33 to 35% overhead, right? It's really hard to find numbers there. So if you're going to be one of those extraordinary companies that are hitting 20, 25, 30% profit, you have to be the most productive client you can, most productive company you can be. And the way you do it is exactly what you said, is you want to make sure you have many producers as possible, because that leads to productivity. And so if you're operating at a 60% margin, then guess what? You're going to be a lot closer to that 20% than anyone else out there. So I mean, everything you're saying really does tie back to financials, because that's where you find the percentages. That's where you find those numbers, is at the gross profit, not at the overhead. So it all ties back to the numbers that we tell our clients. But that's a great way you started it, was just talking about, how can you produce more, because that will get you those big numbers you're looking for in the bottom line.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you very much, guys. Thanks for reading the book and understanding it as well. So I appreciate that.
Yep. Great.
I didn't say understood it, I just read it.
But actually, the majority of the book is about exactly what you guys spoke about, right? We did the manager text on this. I'd be happy to come back and dive into what we call the project failure rate, right? And the high costs of the project failure rate, or a challenged project thing as well. And that's probably our bread and butter. So I appreciate you bringing it up. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll definitely have you on for another one. I enjoyed this a ton. I'm sure readers will the same. Jamie,
Thanks everybody. Definitely check out Jack, and reach out to him on LinkedIn. He's definitely a good connection that you want in your Rolodex. So appreciate you coming on.
Thanks so much, guys. What a pleasure. It was fun.
Thank you. Awesome.
Enjoy this podcast? Visit our website, summitcpa.net, to get more tips and strategy for achieving business success. We're here to be a resource in this ever-changing industry.